One. So, this story has been a long time coming. Some of you are going to remember the things that I've been through, those of you that have been hanging out with me through the years and watching me go through all these phases. I'm going to try and not make this like a really long video, and I'm going to try not to cry through it also. Um, it's a very sensitive subject for me, but I want the information to get out there. I want everybody to understand that there is a cancer like this that exists. So in July of 2021, I was diagnosed with a rare form of bone marrow cancer called myelofibrosis. And I was diagnosed after being hospitalized that spring in late April. I was hospitalized for a week after a blood clot was found in the right venous sinus of my brain. That was a really traumatic experience. Having a blood clot in my brain felt like my brain was being squeezed. I had so much fluid on my brain. It literally felt like my brain was being squeezed. I had to wear sunglasses for a while. I didn't have a stroke, but I had stroke-like symptoms. So since it was the right side of my brain, the left side of my body, the nerves and the way that I could function, I had to walk with a cane for a few months before, once the fluid started to drain, I was slowly getting my motor skills back. And I had to wear sunglasses. I wore some heart sunglasses inside. I had to wear really heavy shaded sunglasses outside because my eyes were so sensitive from the pressure of the fluid in my brain. The reason why I ended up with a blood clot in my brain was because my platelets were twice as many as I was supposed to be making. So when your immune system gets a signal that you've been cut, like your body's been cut in some way, or there's an infection in some way, your body signals your immune system. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know exactly how it all works, but this is what I've learned in the last couple of years. Your body creates this signal, especially if it's like a cut, to that it needs to have your blood clot, right? And so platelets are made. And your body's natural defense against cuts and stuff are platelets. And so, but my body was making platelets without the necessity. Like, I didn't need the platelets made, but they were being made in excess. So my primary doctor sent me to an oncologist, hematologist. That was the first time I heard the word cancer. Had to go to the Cancer Center, Cancer Institute in Kansas City. And they did blood tests and ruled out leukemia, which was wonderful. They did blood tests and ruled out lymphoma, which was wonderful. And then they did the bone marrow aspiration. And that test came back positive for a gene mutation, or my blood test had come back positive for a gene mutation. And so that's why they did the bone marrow aspiration, because she had an idea that it was possibly this blood disease and not necessarily a cancer, but also a blood disease that can happen. And unfortunately, it did not come back as that blood disease. It came back as stage 1 myelofibrosis. So I began treatment right away, and I had an iron transfusion because my iron was really low. The doctors all tell you that they don't know how this happens. That they say that there's no known cause. But after doing research, and they also say that it's really rare, like maybe 1,000 people in the United States have had this year, or like right now they're diagnosed like 1,000. But the Facebook group where I learned most of my information, that's how rare this is, you guys. Like, I learned most of my information from a Facebook group because doctors don't fucking know. Excuse my language, but they don't. They're trying, I think, but it's just another blood cancer. It's not genetic. So my kids are out of the woods, thank goodness. But if it's not genetic, that means that it's environmental. And that means that the way that I was raised, the way that the food that I was given to eat, the food that I was taught to eat, the food that I continue to eat, the drinks that I continue to drink. I smoked for 23 years. I smoked cigarettes for 23 years. I quit in 2019 before all of this even happened. They tell you they don't know. But then we see the link to, like, the colors, the food dyes. Skittles are linked to cancer now. Eating those food dyes, and you guys, like, I had such a sugar problem for a really long, like, I was so addicted to candy. My favorite things in the whole world were those Starburst jelly beans. They used to only come out during Easter, and I think they have them year round now. And I haven't had them in a really long time, but I had such an addiction to those for like they first came out like a decade ago or something. And I had such an addiction to them. And they're just full of all those colors, the red, the blue. And like, I know I'm not the person to look at everybody and be like, don't do this to your body. Don't do this to yourself. Like, I'm not going to shame anyone and point my finger. I'm just going to look at you and say, this body that you're in, think of it as a house that you have to live in for 70 years. And maybe it won't last for 70 years. For me, it's not going to. Which is the saddest part, I think. This is a really long cancer. It's the hardest part for me to accept sometimes, because I've had to do a lot of accepting. I had to do a lot of accepting in my life. And I think the hardest thing for me to accept is how long I'm going to be treated for this thing, and that it's never going to go away. So right now I take a chemo pill every day, sometimes twice a day, depending on what day it is. And I take a targeted immunotherapy. Because they've already done research for this particular cancer, and one of the drugs that helps, the targeted immunotherapy that helps with the symptoms, the night sweats and the bone pain and the enlarged spleen, it helps. It is the same medication that they give to, sorry, I did not want to cry through this. It's the same medication they give to bone marrow transplant patients that have graft versus bone disease or something like that. Graft versus something. Anyways, where your body rejects the bone marrow transplant, and so they give you this medication to like lessen the symptoms and the pain of it. But that's really my only hope at this point, is a bone marrow transplant. And so I've got that information just, with this video. If you're under 40 years of age and you're interested in helping me or helping anybody, like anybody with a blood cancer will probably end up doing a bone marrow transplant. So for now, I am being treated daily with chemo and a targeted immune therapy. Sometimes I have to have blood transfusions, iron transfusions. That's going to get more and more as we get further into it. But like this disease, it evolves. this cancer evolves, and it starts as it's fibrosis, it's scar tissue in the bone marrow, and you become anemic and your bone marrow starts to fail, and then it evolves into acute myeloid leukemia, and that is the hardest leukemia to fight. So obviously we don't want it to get there, but it's different for everybody. It's a different course for everybody. It's a different treatment for everybody. It treats everybody differently. Some people live for 20, 30 years with no symptoms, and then boom, they have symptoms. For me, it is a daily thing. I am blessed and grateful to wake up every day, because the reality of my situation is that I could just die of a stroke at any time. There's really nothing stopping that other than the blood thinners that I take every day. And sometimes medicine does not work. Sometimes it fails. And so I have to live with that. I try. There are some moments in my life that I actually can live in like joy and pleasure and not think of myself as sick, or not think of myself as, just, in pain or whatever. Because I go through these symptoms that I have, the bone pain that I have, the fatigue that I have, it comes and goes, and you never really know from one day to the next how it's going to play out. So I'm just blessed and grateful that I feel good now, that I'm able to get up. I can get up and I can walk about a half a mile every day, where I used to run a 5K every single morning. I can't do that anymore. I can only walk about a half a mile, but I love that I can still do what I'm doing. And I love that I can celebrate my life every day. And so I'm doing that. And I hope you all will join me in that, since this is the month that I was born in. I was born at the end of August. It's a celebration of life this year. And thanks for letting me tell you my story and listening to my story and being here for it. It's a fight, but it doesn't have to be, I guess, for me. I'm trying not to make it a fight. I'm trying to just make it like I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to live every day in the happiest possible way that I can. And part of that is doing this work. So I'm grateful for you all that continue to show up for me. There's not a lot left.